They got what they wanted, right? You wanted to expand the empire to take on Russia or to take on China. Well, now it's happening.
Yeah.
It's not working out the way you thought it was because you're not as
Yeah.
strong as you thought you were. But this is the end result of the ideology. It's coming to head with reality. This was inevitable that this was going to happen as long as this ideology was the preeminent ideology in the United States at the head of the empire. This is what they always wanted. And are they happy? Are they happy they got what they wanted?
Well, they're not happy with the situation, but they're not recognizing the reality. You know, it's just that, as you know, the folks on the Duran always say they have no reverse gear, and I think that's completely correct. It's just that they consistently overestimate the power of the U.S. That's kind of part of the ideology of neoconservatism. It was just like, okay, the U.S. is the preeminent power. It is the global superpower or hyperpower. And it's, you know, therefore it has a duty almost to impose its system on the rest of the world. So there is this revolutionary fervor that's part of neoconservatism. You know, it's not just that, okay, we just coexist, we have different rivals, there are different systems, and we try to get along with those other systems. Pursuing our own interests, but recognizing they have their interests, and that's not neoconservatism. It's just that, okay, we have the best system. This is the end of history kind of thinking, and it's our duty to export it to the rest of the world. At the same time, we are the great power. That's, I think, the other side of the coin of neoconservatism. We are the greatest power, and no one really can oppose us. Now, clearly, they're failing on both accounts, but they're just not recognizing it. They're not waking up to the reality. They're just pushing harder. And the attitude seems to be again and again, it's just like, oh, if there's a problem, it's just because we haven't pushed hard enough. It's because we've shown too much restraint. You know, we've just got to go to tomahawks. We got to, whatever. We got to send troops there. It's just said, okay, yeah, we were just, we were too cautious. You know, of course, the opposite is true. It was our lack of caution, our recklessness, our aggressiveness that led to all this. But that's not the way that they're not capable of seeing that.
I think for most people in America, and myself included, it's amazing that this was allowed to happen for so long. This idea, this empire expansion. The thing is, us regular citizens, we had really no idea because it was often we didn't really understand what was happening, and it's packaged to us via Hollywood. We think about it when there's interventions like, oh, there's some poor villagers there that they don't have any rights, and here comes America delivering rights. Captain America just dropping in, and that's kind of our retarded third grade thinking. But I honestly think that's how I think many people thought, right. And now it's just starting to. I think there's this mass awakening. Like, wait a second. What have we been doing the past 70, 80 years? I thought we were saving the world. And now it's actually all this nasty espionage, so supporting this dictator and overthrowing this people, working with these terrorists and just all this horrific stuff. And for what? And why are we $38 trillion in debt? How much did we spend on that Iraq? $8 trillion? Whoa, that's a lot of, it's just like it came like, we as Americans, we've just been duped. We've been duped for the past 80 years. They just told us how awesome we were and we're just this force for good. Yeah. And, we just watched Star Wars and saw the rebels, and then we didn't realize that we were the evil empire. We were Emperor Palpatine, which makes sense. We're the empire. We should have realized that. But somehow we thought we were just, supporting these plucky little rebels and taking on the Death Star. And the Death Star is Iran. Right. The Death Star is Russia. The Death Star is China. It's like, we're the Death Star.
Yeah. No. That's very true. I mean, and that rhetoric, that really kind of comic book rhetoric is still very much in play. I'll look through the mainstream stories on Ukraine, and it's the same thing. The plucky, they're like the rebels fighting the Death Star, and it just wouldn't be right for us not to be pumping them full of arms. Yeah, well, no mention of banderism and the Azov, but how that's all disappeared. They're just they're nothing, or press gangs or whatever. They're just they're that plucky rebel band that we need to support.
Yeah, it's getting harder and harder for people to look at it through those rose tinted glasses now. Especially, I mean, especially just what our support of Israel and what they've done in Gaza is just really kind of just beyond the pale. And I think a lot of people that woke up a lot of people. But then just the hypocrisy of what we're doing here in Venezuela. This just gearing up for a war. This embargo, stealing.
Right. Yeah, no, it's so. I just look at it just breathtakingly, obscenely. Imperialistic and just in really the worst sense of the term. And there's just so little pushback, from the left within this country or from Europe or whatever. I just find it, I'm really stunned by it. And I shouldn't be. But then, you even have people like I was just saying, like Mamdani and others who may be very good in Palestine. They kind of shrug their shoulders at that. At least the left that I remember from my youth would be out in the streets protest. This would be, this goes against everything that they would stood for. But it's just like, there's some mild protests or criticisms. It's a little bit in the, not much within the pages of the New York Times or. Really very little, and a lot of support for it.
What we've done right now with Venezuela with this military blockade, and seizing their ships. I mean, this is a textbook definition of an act of war, right? By any international law. So, I mean, essentially, we have declared war on Venezuela. Venezuela is not doing anything back yet because they don't want an excuse for the United States to just go nuts.
Right.
But yeah, this is an act of war, right? I mean, do you think that this will become a real war soon then?
It always, we've been talking about it for better than 2 months now. It certainly can. I mean, the potential, you have all that firepower there, and you've created, all these pretexts. First, of course, it was the narco-terrorists, and then all of a sudden, after 2 months, we hear it's about the oil, and they stole our oil. You think if they actually stole our oil, we've heard that at the start, but it was obviously. So you have these pretexts, you have the firepower, and then we have the reputation of the United States military is now, being put on the line, especially the personal reputation of our president. He's, invested a lot of this. I don't think that he can walk away from this. And if Maduro doesn't step down, I think that's what they're trying to make happen and, let Machado take over. And I don't think, so far he's held very firm. There's no signs of him backing down. We may go for, the blockade's already an act of war, but then it may become, more directly military in form.
Yeah, I just feel like at some point the United States is going to have to put its money where its mouth is, or fold, its cards, because we like to get involved in all these conflicts, put pressures, and we like to use, our normal tools are usually economic sanctions, so just leveraging the financial infrastructure of the United States, and that used to just destroy countries. But we're seeing that they can survive now. And Russia's proved that you can not only survive, you can actually thrive, and that there is another ecosystem. There's an alternative out there.
Right.
So this isn't working. So and our soft power, like we said, is rapidly declining. People aren't buying our BS Hollywood movies saying that America is number one anymore after everything we're doing. So I just feel like at some point, the U.S. is going to actually have to, if it wants to, continue this ideology, this imperial expansion, preserving the empire, it's going to have to put up some real forces itself to try to show that I am a real empire. Here are my legions, and then that's where I think everything's going to go haywire, or it's going to have to fold. Because just think about, it's not our people that are dying in Ukraine. We will sacrifice Ukrainians forever. And then the same thing when we look at these Middle East wars, we are very risk adverse when it comes to casualty adverse. We don't want to have anything happen here, but we're always talking so tough against China, against Iran. And then you see on Fox News, they'll just look at our heroes jumping off of a helicopter onto an civilian oil tanker. Like, this is our big thing. It's like, okay, yeah, you're taking a civilian, this is piracy is what you're broadcasting. Right. You're broadcasting piracy. You're saying that we're pirates, And so it just, at some point, people are going to start to really question the American empire. It's like, well, what do you really do? What if you don't actually fight? You get other people to fight, and they use your weapons, and your weapons don't seem to be doing that well, and you seem to always run around and lose. I mean, we saw in the Red Sea. I mean, people can make the argument that we haven't really won a war since World War II, and really the Soviets won that war for us. So it's just, I feel like we're getting to that point. There's going to be enough people around the world just questioning the strength of the empire. And they are. And at some point, and I feel like that was one of the reasons why Trump started this whole Venezuela thing. I think the idea was that we can show that we are a top dog, but let's do it in our backyard, in our hemisphere. We can't start a war over Taiwan or China's coast. We know that won't work. But, Venezuela, they're a third world country, but we do put sanctions on them. We got all of our CIA assets in there, and we got this plan with the Nobel Peace Prize, which is just absurd, this whole thing. And I think that was kind of the plan. And now they're starting to realize, I don't know if we can even do that. But like I said, America's going to have to put up or shut up, and I think that's where I think Trump is trying to walk that line, is just praying that Maduro will just be like, oh, you know what, I've had enough. Just I'll leave. Give me some money and put in Machado. But I don't. That's not going to happen. And he's got a mess on his hand. He's painted himself in a corner. You're going to turn tail and run, and then everybody's like, okay, what the hell was that? You just engaged in a couple acts of piracy and thumped your chest. It's like this. That doesn't make you look strong. You look pathetic.
Yeah. Well, no, I think everything you said is very true. I don't have a whole lot to add to it. I just say that he might pull it off. I don't like saying that, but, maybe he will manage to force Maduro to leave, or they'll succeed with some sort of limited decapitation strikes, and they've got their coup planned out. They bought off people, whatever. Again, I don't think they can, but it's not impossible. He might pull it off, but it's obviously difficult. That's, otherwise why, they realize there are a lot of risks and that there's no guarantee that it'll succeed, and it can go very wrong. Otherwise, why are they out? Why have they been out there for 2 months? Right. And it could go very, very wrong. Trump is, he loves these quick, Captain America kind of operations. That's the world that he inhabits. But he does have a real aversion, much of the establishment, to boots on the ground and to a real war. I think he really wants to avoid that. The thing is that he might be drawn into it, because of these foolish actions that he's taken. You start to go down that road, and then at some point, you're just forced to keep on going down it. That's the logic of military conflict. You never wanted to do all these things, but once you start the process, it's just like you're one thing leads to another. Because you're always faced with the choice between folding, just leaving and thereby suffering a humiliation, and pressing farther than you originally wanted to go.
So you think that's where we're headed? Because in all likelihood, Maduro is not going to be ousted.
So far, no signs of it, right? Nobody's pointing to any real unrest within Venezuela. It seems like the people, by and large, there is a significant opposition within Venezuela that's pro-American and actually probably wants to see them come in, but they appear to be very much a minority. I don't really know, I don't have a real feel of what's going on the ground there, but that's what from the sources that I have, that seems to be the case.
Yeah, I think this is going to be the end of the empire when the U.S. gets involved in a real war with Venezuela. When we start to have some real casualties, and it's just
it would be. I think they know it would be really ugly. Again, Venezuela is a very large territory. It's covered with jungle, and much of it is mountainous and hilly, and there's swamps and whatever. It's the kind of terrain that's actually sort of designed for guerrilla bands,
right,
for the kind of militias that Venezuela has, and and really negates our advantages when you get on the ground. Iraq is actually quite different. It's open and sandy, and there's so air power reigns supreme, and there's nowhere to hide. But here, there's just
it's just jungle. You can't see 2 feet in front of you.
100 million places to hide. Yeah, exactly. So it seems to me that it would be a real disaster, and they know that, and that's probably why they're still out there hoping that something will happen.
Well, do you think that you don't think that Trump can turn around? Like you said, the logic of war is once you start, we see some tankers, we've blown up ships, we
Yeah.
keep on making these threats, we've been out there. Do you think that there's some chance that maybe we'll just sort of somehow claim victory and just turn around?
Yeah.
And
That would
Maduro's
be the
still
best.
there?
Yeah. It seems unlikely. But I would hope so. Maybe, we could go bomb some camps out in the jungle and say those were the narco terrorist camps. We've identified that, we've taken them out. We've made America safe. We're heading back home.
Yeah, the messaging is weird as well. I mean, I don't even know.
Well, it's
Are they
mixed
still
message.
pushing the? Yeah,
No,
are they
not so
still
much
saying
now,
narco
Mark.
terrorists?
Right. Now they're talking about stolen oil. That's
Yeah, stealing oil and funding Hezbollah or something.
Yeah, right.
It's like I don't know. It's just like
Yeah.
they should have got their messaging straight as well.
Right.
Before they try to sell this to the American people. But
Right.
this is happening, and at the same time, in a couple of days, supposedly, I think on Monday, Netanyahu is supposed to come and talk to Trump about war with Iran. Although I heard I think it was on Jamal Thomas's show that he was interviewing somebody, and the guy was saying that he thinks that whole thing is kind of a cover, that they're probably actually going to be talking more about the Epstein files, Charlie Kirk assassination, because these things are really damaging Israel. But you can't say that Netanyahu is coming to talk about
that may be
it.
true. And I've said it also could be a negotiating move. So, we'll see. If we'll see what happens afterwards, the statements that are made, the press conferences held after the meeting, and then in the days that follow. If we hear more and more about Iran, then we know that, it really seems to be about Iran, and that we may be heading towards a new conflict there. But if that just disappears, then we know that, it was probably a cover, or maybe it was just a negotiating move.
Yeah, the guy that Jamal was interviewing, sorry I forgot his name, but he was a good guest. He was saying that, of course, they'll talk about Iran. He says he's sure that anytime Netanyahu comes over Iran, they talk about Iran. You always talk about Iran, but the meat of it is probably these other things as well. It's because
I can't remember.
Because
it was
it's
like
true.
it was the head, I think, like the editor of the Middle East Eye or something, said like he actually met Netanyahu back in the early 2000s, and the first thing that Netanyahu said to him had to do with Iran. So he was talking about it then. I guess he just does it with everybody. He's still obsessed with it, and that's one reason to be, again, worried that in the long run, this, I don't see, we see a little bit of evidence that it may be back, on the immediate horizon. But again, that's questionable for the reasons that we just discussed.
Yeah,
but anyway, in the long run, though, there's always that there is this obsession with Iran, and it could always come back at some point, whether it's in months or years, we don't know.
Yeah, it just seems to be complete insanity to think about going to war with Iran. I mean, first we saw what Iran's capable of. Israel saw it too, so it's just insane to me that they would want this. But at the same time, we're talking about going to a war with Venezuela, which we say is going to be an absolute quagmire. I mean, Venezuela is 3 times the size of Vietnam. And we had something like 500,000 troops in Vietnam. It's like, what do you think we're going to do here? And then even if you do kill Maduro, get rid of him, what next? What are you going to do? You're going to just rule this government where you're hated, rule this country where everybody hates you?
Yeah, right.
It's like, do they have a plan? I don't think they have a plan. It's just like, we'll just get rid of them and assume that Machado will be able to. It seems absurd. I mean, when do these regime changes really ever work? Do they work? Do we have an example?
Well, you could say it worked
Short
in
term.
Syria. It's sort of. They got what they wanted. They got somebody who's accommodating Israel's demands, and
we got Al Qaeda in Syria, and then
right. That's what we wanted,
But it's what Israel wanted? It's not what America wanted. But we just had like two service members killed out in Damascus, I believe, and it's like a lot of people were asking like, why are we there? Why are we there? I thought the whole point was Assad was bad and we got rid of him, so. And now we're here, and now our service people are getting killed. And who's killing them? It just feels like our troops are there. I just feel like a lot of our military, the people that are in charge, they don't give a damn about them. For them, it's okay. They're lambs to the slaughter. If it serves their larger interest for some conflict or whatever, it's okay. They don't mind that these servicemen get killed. But maybe it'll be good. That'll tie the Americans to the region even more, get them real angry and get them all emotional about this death. And then they'll go blow up some other country in the Middle East that Israel wants us to. Like I
Yeah.
almost feel like that's how they view our military. It's just
Yeah, no, I think in part, and then there's just also just the financial interest too, institutional interests. There's probably a lot of institutional interest tied to this occupation of part of Syria, and just like it proved impossible to actually dismantle NATO, it becomes true of all kinds of things. It's like, oh yeah, this no longer serves a purpose, or never really did. But even on the this the reasons were never really valid. But even those invalid reasons have ceased to exist in the case of Syria, and it's still there. What's going on? It's just that there's always this institutional inertia. A lot of people just have a vested interest in keeping things going. Their jobs depend on it. And their career path is dependent on having this go there, and their people are making money off of it. So it just continues. But
yeah.
the
Well,
reasons that you gave to are, that's part of it as well. That's
yeah, well, it's just it's so fascinating now because it's all coming to a head, and it's going to, and unfortunately, it's probably going to result in some disastrous war for the United States.